In a house where silence screams louder than any storm, Eleanor Grayson, 72, is a ghost in her own life. Her children, Lily and Michael, have forgotten her, their texts cold, their visits rare. An Easter dinner sits abandoned, a symbol of her fading existence. But Paris whispers her name, a city of secrets and second chances. Will she find the woman she lost in its winding streets? Or will the pain she carries unravel her? Before we dive deep into this dramatic story, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any of our upcoming tales. And leave a comment to let us know where you're watching from. And now, dear audience, let's dive into this gripping story together. I'm 72-year-old Eleanor Grayson, and every morning my bones groan like the ancient house's floors, reminding me of the years I've accumulated with every step. The porcelain cup clinking on the saucer as I pour my morning tea makes my hands tremble a little. But my mind is keen, holding on to memories like a lifeline and refusing to let go of the past. The house, a hollow shell, where mayhem and laughter once reigned, is now too quiet. Things weren't always like this. Our house was alive with the sounds of our children, Lily and Michael, the clatter of dishes, the warmth of shared meals, and the voices of our children when my late husband Thomas was still living. Now that I am alone, the silence feels more deafening than any storm. Easter, a day that formerly meant everything, is today. The smell of roasted lamb and rosemary filled the air as I spent the morning in the kitchen, along with the rich swirl of mashed potatoes and the tart tang of Lily's favorite lemon meringue pie. Tommy Michael's kid turned 8 last week, and I made him a chocolate cake. I spent weeks organizing this meal, my heart bursting with the hope that it would reunite my broken family and bring us together around the table, as we did in their youth when love was uncomplicated and unquestioned. I carefully arranged every fork and napkin on the table for 4, the dishes shining under the chandelier. However, by 4:30 p.m., the meal had cooled, the seats were empty, and the wind outside was howling through the trees, mocking the silence inside. With my fingers fumbling on the phone and my heart racing with a mixture of fear and hope, I dialed Lily first. The call went straight to voicemail. "Hi, Lily, this is Mom. I wanted to make sure you would still be attending dinner. I prepared your favorite pie. Give me a call, please." I detested the little, even desperate sound of my voice. Next, I tried Michael. The voice in his voicemail remained cold and robotic, eliciting no response. I called repeatedly, the pain in my chest growing with each ring that went unanswered. With my voice cracking like ice, I managed to leave a message on the 3rd attempt. "It's me, Michael. Tommy's cake is waiting, and dinner is prepared. Just let me know if you're coming, please." I hung up, and the silence engulfed me. I sat at the table and stared at the untouched plates, the vacant chairs, and the cold, solidified meat. I had the impression that my heart was plunging down an unending dark well. They hadn't visited for Easter the year before, or the year before that, so the situation wasn't new. However, I had always justified them. I reminded myself that Lily was occupied with her legal practice. Michael has a tough job and a new baby. Next time they'll be there. But tonight, the truth, raw and uncompromising, came to the forefront. I wasn't just forgotten. I was irrelevant. The thought that I was no longer needed by them stung my throat like acid. I was startled out of my reverie by my phone buzzing. Lily texted, but it had nothing to do with dinner. "Hey Mom, for New Year's, we're organizing a family vacation to Hawaii. Could you monitor Max during our absence? Regards." There were no apologies, no mention of Easter, just a nonchalant request, as if I were a hired helper, rather than their mother. The words were scathing and degrading like a slap. Bandaging scraped knees, staying up late to help with homework, preparing their favorite foods, and wiping away their tears were all things I had done throughout my life to take care of them. I was waiting there all the time, and now they were unable to give me even an hour. The intensity of the situation felt like a weight pressing down on my ribcage, causing me bodily agony. I had to leave that house immediately. With each tick of the clock, the walls seemed to close in, making it feel like a tomb. I snatched up my coat without thinking and staggered out the door, my cheeks stinging from the chilly April air. I had no idea where I was heading, but I was certain that I couldn't wait for a family to reject me. The cold wood seeped through my pants as I dropped upon the steps after my feet took me to the porch. My neighbor, Sarah Miller, was one of the few people who still checked on me and saw me when no one else did, so I took out my phone and called her. My voice broke before I could say anything when she answered. With tears that I hadn't realized were flowing down my cheeks, I said, "Sarah, I can't do this any longer. I'm finished." After a lengthy silence, her steady, pleasant voice broke through my hopelessness. "You don't need to continue doing this, Eleanor." Her comments were like a lifeline pulling me back from the edge. "You deserve so much more." I wanted to express how deeply hurt I was, but I couldn't find the right words. Rather, I hung up, gasping for air, and gazed out at the street as it grew darker. I kept thinking about the pile of bills on my kitchen counter, the never-ending to-do lists, and the appointments I had postponed for weeks. Then, in a flash of insight, I decided that I was done waiting. With a mixture of defiance and dread pounding my heart, I made my way back inside. My fingers shaking, I reached for my laptop and opened a travel website. Paris. Just the word conjured up images of a place I had fantasized about since I was a young girl, reading books about sidewalk cafes and cobblestone streets. With no itinerary or plan, just a frantic need to get away from the oppressive weight of this empty house, I booked a flight for the next morning. Instead of fleeing, I was sprinting in the direction of something myself, and a life I had forgotten I could claim. I didn't get much sleep that night. The bed seemed like a huge space where Thomas's warmth once was. I gazed at the ceiling with a weird, thrilling purpose instead of terror as the weight of my choice pressed down. I was 72 years old, and I was choosing myself for the first time in decades. The early sun filtered through the curtains, streaking the floor with gold. I didn't wait for the unanswered calls or check my phone. I dressed, showered, and packed a small piece of luggage, moving slowly and deliberately. The once overwhelming silence of the home seemed almost serene, as though it sensed my liberation. The cool air pricked my skin as I stepped outdoors and made my way to the library, which has been my haven since Thomas died. I was anchored by the faint murmur of hushed voices and the scent of old books. When she saw me, Sarah, who was reading a novel at a table, lit up. "Eleanor, are you okay?" With anxiety in her voice, she inquired. I grinned, not the fake smile I'd been wearing for years. "I've improved, Sarah." Her eyes widened, then softened with realization. "Today, I'm heading to Paris." "Well done," she said. "At last you are living for yourself." We chatted for a long time about everything and nothing, and as I was leaving the library, I sensed a change in myself, a glimmer of freedom I hadn't had in years. Paris was more than simply a place to visit. It was a promise and an opportunity to rediscover the person I had buried beneath decades of sacrifice. My heart was racing with excitement rather than fear as I drove to the airport. I felt free to enter the world, and for the first time in a long time, I wasn't scared to do so. Paris and I were both waiting. The plane landed in Paris as the sun sank, painting the sky in shades of rose and amber. Eleanor Grayson entered a distant country with a frantic pounding of nerves and excitement in my heart. I had never done anything like such an act at 72, making a last-minute travel reservation, pursuing a desire I had harbored since I was a young kid. I felt like a stranger in my skin as I made my way through the busy airport, the clamor of French voices swirling about me, and the air smelled different here, crisp with possibilities. However, I was overcome not by dread, but by hunger, and a need to recover the parts of myself that I had lost in the silence of my empty home. I arrived at a little flat in the Marais, a quaint alcove with a window overlooking a cobblestone street below and groaning wooden flooring. "Bienvenue, madame," remarked the wiry landlord, who smiled kindly as he gave me the keys. As I unpacked my suitcase with the burden of home still weighing heavily on my shoulders, his words, "Paris will take care of you," lingered. Lily and Michael's absence throughout Easter and their casual dismissal in texts about dog-sitting left me feeling deeply unsettled. They had abandoned me to drown in quiet after I had given them everything: my time, my love, my very breath. However, I wasn't their grandma mother or fallback option here in this light-filled metropolis. Eleanor was all I was, and that was sufficient. Bakers churning dough scooters whizzing down tiny alleys and the distant ring of a church bell were all part of the gentle hum of Paris when I woke up the first morning. In the small kitchen, I brewed coffee, the heady scent enveloping me like a cozy hug. I didn't check my phone for once, and I wasn't prepared for the pain of not getting any notifications. Instead, I wore a scarf and a basic sweater, wore my gray hair loosely beneath a hat, and went out into the world. The smell of autumn leaves and freshly baked croissants filled the cold air. Without a guide, I let my feet lead the way as I roamed each step, a tiny act of rebellion against the life I had left behind. By midday, I arrived at a café with a striped awning that fluttered in the wind along the Seine. Sitting outside at a little table, I drank espresso so potent that it startled my senses. Boats glided by, their white sails catching the light as the river shimmered in the midday sun. People moved all about me, including a young couple laughing over pastries, a woman in a scarlet coat dashing past, and a toddler chasing a bird with joyful shrieks. My heart was bursting with a silent happiness I hadn't had in years as I observed them. No one recognized me here as the lady who lived for others, prepared unfinished meals, and patiently waited. In a city full of dreamers, I was just another soul here. However, relinquishing the responsibilities of home proved to be challenging. My phone buzzed in my backpack while I sipped my coffee. Despite my better judgment, I glanced at the screen. Michael texted, "I'm sorry about Easter, Mom. Work has been quite hectic. I hope all is well with you." Lily then said, "I missed you at Easter, Mom. When you get back, can we talk?" The words rippled through my newly discovered tranquility like stones dropped into a quiet pond. They apologized, but it sounded vacuous, like a last-minute scribbling on a napkin. The familiar pang of neglect clawed its way back into my chest, tightening it. Refusing to allow their remarks to bring me down, I put the phone face down. This is not the place for me. This isn't the right moment for me. The soft ripples of the Seine reflected the anguish in my emotions as I paid for my coffee and made my way toward the river. I paused at a bridge and leaned against the stone railing to observe lovers entwining their fingers and tourists taking pictures. I felt like a ghost, torn between the woman I wanted to be and the one I had been, even though the city was teeming with activity. I had been Lily and Michael's rock for decades, making amends for their mistakes and forgiving their absences. What had I lost, though? Their wants overshadowed my own voice and my own goals. The harsh reality was that they didn't truly see me. I was not a person with my own heart or my own pains. I was a convenience and a safety net. I continued to walk until I came to a tiny bookshop nestled between two Ivy League buildings. The door was propped open, and the smell of old pages drew me in like a seductive lure. Books in every language were piled high on the shop's maze-like shelves, their spines weathered from years of curious hands. The feel of them grounded me as I ran my fingertips over them, and then I noticed a slim leather-bound book. Poème d'une âme vagabonde was written in gold and glittered in the low light. It felt like a message carved specifically for me, a whisper from the cosmos saying, "You're on the right path." I didn't know much French, but I opened it and was taken aback by a quote on the first page. The only true journey is the one that leads us back to ourselves. I bought the book and headed back to the street, clutching it tightly. The pain of my family's rejection blended with the words as they replayed in my head. Not only was I fleeing from them, but I was also running in the direction of the woman I had lost my identity as. However, the pain persisted, a shadow I was unable to escape. I gave Sarah another call that night while I was sitting in my apartment with the book open on my lap. Over the Atlantic, her voice was a lifeline. "How is Paris doing, Eleanor?" Her warmth pierced the static as she asked. "It's stunning," I murmured, my voice quivering. "But Sarah, I can't get them out of my head. I let them push me away." The words came out sharp and hot, ripping up scars I had attempted to ignore. "I've been there everything, and now I'm nothing." As steady as a heartbeat, Sarah's voice grew softer. "Eleanor, you are not nothing. They are not entitled to define you, even though you've given them your entire life. Here in Paris, you are discovering who you are. That's what matters now." Her words soothed the jagged edges of my heart like a balm. Through the open window, I could hear the hum of the city as I closed my eyes. She was correct. I came here to rebuild, not to run away. The days that followed were a haze of learning. I strolled around Montmartre, where the air was heavy with the aroma of coffee and paint, and the steep streets were crowded with artists and their easels. As I watched kids chase balloons in parks, their laughter brought back memories of my easier days spent with Lily and Michael. When I went to museums, I stood in front of paintings that seemed to have been created over centuries, their hues communicating to the parts of me that had been suppressed for a long time. Paris was more than simply a city. It was a mirror that reflected the person I could become if I had the courage to let her out. However, the anguish of my family's disregard followed me, a silent undercurrent beneath the bustle of the city. All I could think about was the recollection of that barren Easter table, where the plates I had placed with such expectation now collected dust. It clung to me like a wet cloth, even though I wanted to be free of it and let go of the hurt. The truth struck me with ruthless clarity one evening as I sat in a small park tucked away behind ivy-covered gates. I couldn't keep acting like things would change on their own. Using the power I had discovered here, rather than my wrath, I had to face Lily and Michael. With my fingertips lingering over Michael's number, I took out my phone. A storm was building in my chest as my heart thumped. How would I respond? How could I reveal to them the depth of my pain and the years I'd spent hidden with the cool air supporting me? I inhaled deeply before dialing. With every ringing tone, the truth got closer. Michael's voice was hesitant and aloof as he responded. "Mom, you're where?" Despite the shaking in my palms, I said, "I'm in Paris," in a firm voice. "And Michael, we must speak. Almost anything. I've tolerated the way you and Lily have treated me. I can't continue like this." The only sound to break the deep and heavy silence was the distant hum of his office. "Paris." He spoke in a tone that was both surprised and protective. "You simply departed without informing anyone. We had been concerned." Mom. Concerned. "You weren't concerned when you skipped Easter and left me seated at a table for 4? I said, laughing with a loud, bitter tone that even startled me. "When you requested me to monitor your dog as if I were a hired assistant, you weren't concerned. You've made me feel insignificant, Michael. Even though I've been your mother and everything." Even though his voice grew softer, I could still hear the hint of unease. "Mom, I didn't mean to. Simply put, life has been hectic. You are aware of the situation." I responded, "No, Michael," with a fury in my voice that I was unaware I had. "I'm not sure how it works. I've been there before, waiting for you, hoping you'll see me, and giving my everything to a family that never shows up. I've had enough of being invisible. I'm overwaiting on your concern." I believed he had hung up for a second, as the line became quiet. Then he spoke, although it was hardly more than a whisper. "Mom, I had no idea you felt this way. I apologize." I find myself speechless. With a sorrowful heart but a firm resolve, I said, "You don't have to say anything. All I need is for you to hear me. Eleanor, not just your mother, deserves recognition." My hands trembled as I hung up, but my spirit felt lighter, as though I had lost a skin that no longer fit. "I'm not going to beg for your love anymore," I said. For the first time, I felt as though I was on my own, prepared to take back the life I had been denying myself for too long, as Paris loomed before me, its lights glimmering like stars. My Marais apartment's lace curtains let in the gentle glow of the Parisian dawn, which greeted me with delicate shadows on the wooden floor. 72-year-old Eleanor Grayson stood on the precipice of something new, my heart still aching from the previous evening's phone conversation with Michael. In my memory, his words, "I didn't know you felt like this, Mom," reverberated like a shaky thread of hope entangled with the burden of years of being invisible. However, in this city of dreams and cobblestones, I was coming to see myself as a woman with a fire still burning inside of her, a fire that I had almost allowed to go out, rather than as the mother who waited. As I sat by the window with the poetry book I had purchased open on my lap, I brewed coffee, the harsh scent grounding me. Like a prayer, the quote about the road to oneself persisted, encouraging me to continue on this path, despite how shaky it seemed. Paris had evolved from a haven to a teacher teaching me how to hold my own heart carefully. However, I was unable to completely escape the shadow of the hurt caused by my children's neglect. Although Michael's apology had been a positive beginning, it wasn't yet sufficient. In order for them to see the woman I was growing into, I needed to confront them and stand in my truth not just over a smoldering phone line, but in person. That morning, I dressed with intention, draping a deep green scarf that evoked the forests of my native land around my neck like a piece of armor. With merchants' shouting voices resonating, and the aroma of freshly baked baguettes blending with the cool October air, the streets of Paris were alive with activity. I went to a quiet park by the Seine, with benches nestled beneath old trees, whose leaves murmured secrets in the breeze, and iron gates covered in ivy. I took out my phone as I sat with the soft wood beneath me, calming my rushing mind. Lily's number made my fingers pause. Michael had listened, but Lily, my strong, self-reliant daughter, had always been more difficult to approach, because her heart was protected by barriers I had never completely broken. With a continuous drumbeat in my heart, I dialed. Every tone on the phone challenged my willpower. Lily's voice was preoccupied and clipped as she responded. "Mom, what's happening? Are you all right?" The worry ached like a thorn and seemed practiced more like a formality than an emotion. Like the river flowing by me, I spoke calmly but firmly. "I'm in Paris, Lily, and I need you to hear me. Being the mother who waits for you to remember her is not something I can continue to do. I can't keep preparing dinners that go unfinished and arranging tables you never attend while I wait for a call that never arrives." She paused, her amazement weighing heavily on her. "Paris? Did you leave for Paris without informing us? Mom, what is this affair about? You're acting as though we've abandoned you?" Her tone was abrasive and combative, and it stoked a fire of rage that I had been holding inside for too long. "Forgotten." My voice rose as I spoke, the words gushing out like water over a dam. "Lily, you've abandoned me for years. I'm done carrying the weight of all the missed meals, unanswered calls, and instances in which you treated me more like a convenience than your mother. You have offered me excuses, although I have given you my entire life. I'm worthy of better." Only the faint background hum of her workplace, the clatter of keyboards, and the muffled conversations broke the terrible silence. Her voice was softer, but still reserved as she spoke again. "Mom, I had no idea you felt this way. You know how busy I have been. Everybody has a life. That's not an excuse, I yelled, my inner wrath growing stronger. Your busyness does not give you the right to ignore me. Raising you, loving you, and waiting for you to visit me have all taken up my time. But Lily, I'm not invisible. As your mother, I am a woman with her heart and aspirations. I've had enough of pleading for your time. When she didn't answer immediately, I felt the weight of all the years I'd spent denying my suffering and acting as though it was sufficient to be needed, rather than loved. She finally responded, "I'm sorry," with a slight crack in her voice that suggested something genuine. "I didn't intend to cause you any harm. I simply didn't see it. I know you didn't," I responded, becoming softer but yet firm. "However, that doesn't alter the actions taken. Lily, I'm not requesting an apology. I want you to appreciate me and consider me more than just a backup plan in case things get hectic in your life. I need you to know that I'm making my own decisions now." Before she could respond, I hung up my hands, shaking, but my spirits up. The park seemed to be alive all around me, with the river whispering its support and the foliage rustling in agreement. Speaking my truth to Lily, as well as to Michael, felt like taking off a bulky garment that I had worn for decades. Paris had given me the confidence to take a position and demand the respect I had too long denied myself. The ensuing days were a dance of self-discovery and liberation, with a hunger I didn't realize I had. I wandered about Paris, my feet following the narrow lanes of Saint-Germain, my eyes soaking in the golden spires of Notre Dame. I sat in cafes and drew in a little notebook I had purchased, capturing the curve of a bridge, a street performer's laughter, or the understated beauty of a moment that was all mine. However, beneath the happiness was the anguish, a silent ache that came to the surface in the nighttime silence of my apartment. I would eventually have to go back home and confront Lily and Michael to find out if they had actually heard me, or if their excuses were merely a way for them to feel less guilty. I contacted Sarah once more one day while I sat in a secret courtyard surrounded by the aroma of jasmine in bloom. Her voice served as a link to the world I had abandoned. Her warmth pierced the distance as she replied, "Eleanor, you sound different, somehow stronger." I traced the edge of my coffee cup with my fingertips and confessed, "I feel it. But Sarah, I'm afraid. I'm afraid they'll expect me to be the same mom when I return, the one who accepts their neglect and manages to smile. I no longer know how to be that woman." Sarah's voice was steady as a heartbeat when she added, "You don't have to be. Eleanor, you've discovered your passion. Nobody should dim it. Nobody, not even they, should dim your passion. You are sufficient in your current state." Her words penetrated deeply and took root in my spirit. I was more than just a widow, a mother, or a grandma. I was Eleanor Grayson, a lady who had spoken truths that had been suppressed for years and who had traveled across the ocean to discover herself. I was now rushing toward a life where I mattered to myself as much as to my family, not away from them. On a bridge across the Seine that night, I could see the city's lights glimmering on the water like stars. My heart was pulled by the eerie song. A street musician played on an accordion, the notes slicing through the atmosphere. After closing my eyes and allowing the music to fill me, I vowed to no longer allow my family's decisions to define who I am. I had given them everything: my time, my love. But now, it was my turn. Paris had demonstrated to me that I could be the woman who lived, not just the woman who waited. I sensed a slight but significant change as I made my way back to my flat with the poetry book in my arm. I was no longer imprisoned by the hurt caused by my children's neglect. I was free because I had chosen myself, not because I had gotten away from them. Tomorrow I would reach out to Lily and Michael once more, setting boundaries and demanding the respect I deserved without resorting to begging or pleading. And if they were unable to provide it, I would leave with the peaceful strength of a woman who has discovered her own path, not with rage. Eleanor Grayson, 72 years old, stood on the balcony of my apartment in Marais, the city stretching out in front of me like a dreamscape, the air in Paris acrid with the smell of rain. Each of the Parisian lights that flickered in the twilight was a spark from the fire I had ignited inside of me. My final chats with Lily and Michael still weighed heavily on my emotions. Their apologies, as brittle as fall foliage, had sparked both uncertainty and hope. Could they really view me today as a woman with her own spirit and scars, rather than as the mother who healed their lives? Although I was unsure, I was certain that I couldn't hide in Paris indefinitely. I begged to take home the power and truth I had discovered here. During my last days in Paris, I relished every second and allowed the city to leave its mark on my soul. As I strolled throughout the Louvre, I stood in front of the Mona Lisa, whose mysterious grin reflected the mystery of my own metamorphosis. The sound of cups clinking and French folks whispering surrounded me like a cozy blanket while I sat at cafes. It felt like I was regaining the lady I had buried under years of sacrifice with every step and breath. Beneath the happiness, though a subdued sense of urgency developed, I had to confront Lily and Michael, not only verbally over the phone, but in person where the reality could no longer be denied. The final time I sat by the Seine was on the morning of my departure with the poetry book open in my lap, and its words pounding steadily. The only true voyage is the one that brings us back to ourselves. My fingers shaking with a mixture of terror and determination, I traced the letters. I wasn't going home to grovel for their affection or revert to my invisible mother persona. I was returning to assert my position, demand respect, and show them the Eleanor who had discovered her voice while strolling through Paris's cobblestone alleys. I felt a knot in my chest, not of fear, but of anticipation as the jet took flight and the city below faded into a patchwork of lights. It was only the beginning of the journey. The familiar streets of my neighborhood pressed against me like an old worn coat, and the air felt thicker back in the States. I didn't go home right away. I chose to drive to my haven, the library, where I was anchored by the peaceful murmur of conversations and the aroma of ancient books. Michael texted me while I was in the air, and I sat at a table with my hands folded looking at it. "Mom, we need to talk. Jenna and I are concerned. Please stop by the house. They said I should be worried, but where was that worry when I was alone at Easter and their messages were about dog-sitting, not family? I haven't responded yet." Paris had ignited a fire inside of me, and I needed time to regain my strength. The following morning, I decided. With a voice as steady as the oaks outside my window, I called Michael. "I'm back," I declared. "I'll meet you at the Parkside Cafe with Lily. An hour. We all need to talk." A pause, followed by a sigh. "All right, Mom. We'll be there." With a purposeful rather than fearful pounding heart, I hung up. The call had nothing to do with their terms of reconciliation or apology. It was about me, about refusing to be invisible any longer, about standing in my truth. When I got there, the cafe was empty, its windows foggy from the early morning cold. I waited at a table beside the window, the cool glass feeling good against my hands. Tightly wrapped around my neck, my green scarf served as a reminder of the fortitude I had brought over the seas and of the forests back home. Lily and Michael appeared different when they entered. Lily's face was tight, her eyes darting as though uncertain of what she would discover, and Michael's shoulders were bent, his normal confidence replaced by a tentative shuffle. There was silence for a moment as they sat across from me, the air heavy with unsaid words. Like the time before a storm, there was a deep silence. "We're sorry," Mom Michael began in a hushed voice. "This is not how we intended to make you feel." His sincere remarks, which served as a reminder of how little they had given a damn before I had them come to me, hurt even if they were sincere. We've been worried since you left for Paris without a word." I stopped him with a clear voice and a raised hand. "Michael, I am not here to apologize. I would like to explain the reason for my visit. For years I've waited, cooked, cleaned up your mess, and loved you even when you weren't there. You abandoned me after I prepared your son's birthday cake and set the table for Easter. Instead of treating me like a mother who merits your time, you treated me like a shadow, someone you call when you need a favor." Lily's hands were fiddling with her coffee cup as her eyes widened. "We were unaware that you felt this way, Mom. We've been so preoccupied with our jobs, children, and other responsibilities. We believed you were fine and didn't require our assistance. Did you not need me?" I spoke, my voice increasing as my inner fire flared. "Lily, I needed you to see me, to give me a call, come see me, and show me that I'm important. Despite dedicating my life to providing you with support and safety, you've treated me as if I'm insignificant. I couldn't breathe here, couldn't wait for you to remember me, so I left for Paris." Guilt engraved on his face, Michael's hands twisted together as he gazed down. "Mom, I didn't realize. You seemed robust and self-sufficient to me. I was blind to the extent of our harm to you. Separate." The sound of my laughter was rough and harsh. "You left me with no other option, so I had to be independent. But Michael, I'm more than simply your mom. I'm Eleanor, a lady with aspirations, suffering, and a life that I am worthy of. And I've had enough of being invisible." Lily's voice wavered as tears welled up in her eyes. "I'm truly sorry, Mom. I didn't mean to give you the impression that you are unimportant." She stretched for my hand, but I didn't accept it just yet. "You've always been there for us, and I've been blind to how much that cost you." I needed them to comprehend how deeply hurt I was and to feel the weight of what I had said. "Sorry isn't enough," I said in a firm yet calm voice. "Respect is something I require not just when it suits you, because I'm worth it, not because you feel awful about it. I need you to see me and make time for me. I'm no longer your fallback option. If you desire a relationship with me, it must be based on equality, as I am choosing myself." The ensuing quiet was distinct. It was gentle with comprehension rather than tense. For the first time, I noticed something new when Michael's eyes met mine, remorse definitely, but also a glimmer of respect. "I understand, Mom," he muttered. "I want to do better since I've taken you for granted. I'd rather not lose you." With tears streaming down her cheeks, Lily nodded. "Mom, I want you to stop feeling alone. We are not blind to you. We will make a sincere effort." With a jumbled mixture of relief and apprehension, I sat back. Although I had heard promises before, their words were a start. I refused to be blinded by hope this time. With the strength I had discovered in Paris, rather than with rage, I would keep them to their word. I said softly but firmly, "I'm not going anywhere. However, things must change beginning right now." The three of us talked in a manner we hadn't done in years while we sat there longer. There were no extravagant displays or assurances of immediate recovery, but there was honesty, a vulnerable, unvarnished honesty that seemed to be the beginning of something new. A peaceful power settled in my chest as I walked out of the cafe, the crisp fall air cooling my skin. I was no longer the lady who waited. I identified with Eleanor, and I felt sufficient. Outside my tiny flat, the golden leaves of fall swirled in the wind, a mute reflection of the sunlight I had left behind in Paris. Winter seeped into my very being. With the same careful attention to detail I had learned on those cobbled alleys, I stood at the kitchen counter and poured tea. I was no longer the lady who had run away to Paris weeks earlier, searching for a spark to rekindle her tired soul, even if the air here was familiar and full of the aroma of home. Waiting for a family that had long since forgotten her, the woman was a shadow. I am Eleanor, now a woman who has discovered her voice and her fire, which I hold like a torch to illuminate the way ahead. Their remarks, honest halting, and genuine still echoed like a faraway drum in my heart from the cafe encounter with Lily and Michael. They pledged to try see me and make time, but ingrained behaviors can quickly shatter commitments. I had swallowed optimism for too long just to choke on disappointment, yet I still wanted to believe them and trust that the remorse in their eyes represented change. I wouldn't wait for them to show themselves this time. If they chose to accompany me, it would be on my terms as I would prioritize my own needs. Following our conversation, the next few days were a silent, rebuilding dance. I refrained from checking my phone, driven by an old, desperate desire to fill the void with their voices. Rather, I occupied my mornings with little acts of defiance, like enrolling in a painting class at the community center, reading poetry by the window, and drawing the oak tree outside. Every choice I made shaped my new existence, with me acting as the weaver rather than the thread. However, the pain of my family's disregard persisted, a bruise that ached whenever I remembered Easter, the empty chairs and the years I had given them without expecting anything in return. One night, Lily knocked softly but insistently, unexpectedly. With a mixture of warmth and caution in my heart, I opened the door. She was standing there with her dark hair pulled back and a tenderness in her eyes that I hadn't seen in a long time. With a quivering voice, she said, "Mom, may I enter?" We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where I had laid out that lonesome Easter feast after I nodded and moved away. Like the gap before a storm passes, the quiet between us felt weighty, but not cruel. She said, stroking the edge of her cup with her fingertips, "I've been thinking about what you said. You often feel invisible due to our presence. Mom, I didn't actually see it. I believed you didn't require our assistance because you were always so strong and stable. However, I was mistaken." With teary eyes, she gazed at me, and for a fleeting moment, I recognized the young child who had clung to me during thunderstorms and desperately needed her mother's arms. "I've been selfish, and I'm sorry." Her comments pierced deeply, but they were truthful rather than painful. I needed her to feel the weight of her absence, so I refrained from reaching for her and erasing the years of separation. "I've loved you with everything I've got," I murmured, my voice as steady as the river I'd been walking alongside in Paris. "I've supported you through every heartbreak, every bruised knee, and every time you needed me. But you weren't there when I needed you to. Giving until nothing is left is not something I can continue to do." Tears were streaming down her face as she nodded. "I understand, Mom. I'd like to perform better." Her voice trembled as she grabbed for my hand, her hold warm and frantic. "I desire your presence in my life, not solely in times of need, but because you are my mother and you hold significance to me." I allowed her to hold my hand this time, sensing that we were creating a delicate bridge that might remain strong if we both took care of it. The following weekend, Michael arrived with his 8-year-old son Tommy, whose laughing filled my apartment like sunlight. Tommy's chuckles were a comfort to my tired heart as we cooked cookies together, despite his tiny hands being awkward with the dough. Michael's eyes were softer than I had seen them in years as he observed us. Later, while Tommy was playing in the living room, he stated, "Mom, I've been a lousy son. I forgot all the things you've done for us because I was too preoccupied with my own life and job. I'd rather not lose you." His remarks ignited the hope I had so tenaciously defended. "I'm not leaving Michael," I responded in a stern yet gentle tone. "However, I've changed as a mother." He nodded, his jaw clenched, and for the first time, I felt like he actually heard me. "I'm Eleanor now, and I need you to see me to respect me, not just when it's easy." The ensuing weeks unfolded gradually as flowers opened to the sun. Although there were still missed calls and times of separation, Lily and Michael also had visits, lunches together, and deeper than surface chats. We were something fresh and sincere. We weren't the family that had been giggling over a packed table. I was their mother, their equal, and a woman they were beginning to see. I was no longer their safety blanket. A month later, I went back to Paris to celebrate rather than to flee. The streets were familiar. The air was brimming with possibilities, and the city welcomed me like a longtime friend. With my poetry book tucked under my arm, I strolled the Seine once more and sat at a cafe drawing the surroundings. I was rushing toward joy this time, not away from agony. Paris had not only provided me with a respite, but also shaped me into a woman who had learned to voice her opinions, maintain her strength, and live without seeking approval. I reflected on my journey not just across an ocean, but also inside my own heart as I stood in front of the Eiffel Tower, its lights glimmering in the twilight. I had been the lady who sank into the background, the widow who wept, and the mother who waited. Now, however, I was Eleanor Grayson, a lady who had bravely confronted her children, traveled across the ocean to rediscover her voice, and discovered that her value was independent of their affection. The silent strength of knowing I was enough made me grin a genuine smile. I continued to build at home not only with Michael and Lily, but also with myself. I read, sketched, and strolled through the park where I had initially mustered up the courage to call them. With my books, my life, and my sketches, my apartment, once a place of silence, became a haven. The phone buzzed more with connection than desperation. A picture of Tommy with flour on his nose from Michael, a text from Lily suggesting a weekend visit. They were making an effort, and I was relearning to trust not blindly, but with open eyes. I opened my poetry book to a new page one evening, while sitting on my veranda with the stars shining overhead, writing my own words with a steady hand and a full heart. My name is now carried by the wind as a song rather than a whisper. I'm Eleanor, made of fire and earth. I am now actively pursuing my own path instead of passively waiting any longer. This is where I feel at home, and the stars shine down on me.